The invitation sat unopened on Daniel Cross's kitchen counter for 11 days. Cream envelope, gold foil lettering, the kind of paper that promised a room full of people who used to know him and thought they still did. 15 years since Riverside High. 15 years since he'd been the quiet kid nobody expected anything from. He almost didn't go. But his daughter Lily, 8 years old and stubborn as a closed door, had found the invitation while looking for tape and asked him one question he couldn't shake. Were you happy back then, Dad? He didn't have a real answer, so he decided to find one. The hotel ballroom on the 20th floor smelled like candle wax and old cologne. Daniel stood at the entrance in the only blazer he owned, the one he'd bought for Lily's kindergarten graduation, and felt 15 years collapse into the width of a doorway. But what happened in that room over the next 2 hours would end with a woman worth $4 billion walking through the crowd, stopping in front of the man who'd mocked him, and speaking 3 words that would silence the entire room. Nobody there expected it, least of all Daniel. Daniel Cross had built a life that looked small from the outside. Divorced at 31, raising Lily on his own after her mother left for a life that didn't room diaper bags or parent-teacher conferences. He worked as a systems technician for a logistics company, the guy who kept warehouse conveyor belts and inventory software running when nobody else could figure out why they'd stopped. He drove a 10-year-old Honda. He clipped coupons without embarrassment. He coached Lily's soccer team on Saturdays and read her 3 chapters every night, even when his eyes burned from a double shift. His life didn't look like success by the metrics his old classmates would recognize. But it was steady, and it was his. And until tonight, he'd never needed anyone else's approval of it. Marcus Reed had been the golden boy of Riverside High, quarterback, class president. The kid teachers forgave for everything because he smiled at the right moments. 15 years later, he ran a mid-sized insurance brokerage, drove a car worth more than Daniel's annual salary, and had never once, as far as Daniel could tell, stopped needing an audience. Daniel spotted him near the bar within minutes, holding court, gesturing with a scotch glass. 3 men laughing at whatever he'd just said. Some things apparently didn't change in 15 years. Daniel got a water and found a quiet corner, hoping the evening might pass without incident. It didn't. Cross. Marcus's voice cut across the room, pitched for an audience. No way. Danny Cross. Still around, huh? He crossed the floor with the easy stride of a man who'd never doubted a room belonged to him, and clapped Daniel on the shoulder hard enough to make a point. What are you doing these days, man? Still fixing computers or whatever it was? IT and systems work, Daniel said evenly. For a logistics company. Marcus's eyebrows lifted in mock delight, playing to the small crowd that had already begun forming around him out of habit. So tech support. Love it. Very stable. A few people laughed, not because it was funny, but because Marcus had given them permission to. Daniel let it go. He'd been let go it before, and it cost him nothing to stay calm now. He turned to walk toward the bar. That's when Marcus, sensing his audience wanted more, raised his voice again. Hold up. Didn't you get divorced? Raising a kid solo now? He said it with a grin, engineered to look friendly, and land like a blade. Man, that's rough. Single dad life. Tell us, what's your big success story these days? The room's attention gathered like weather. Daniel felt the old, familiar cold settle into his chest, the particular humiliation of being made small in front of people who used to sit beside him in homeroom. He didn't answer right away. He simply looked at Marcus, with a stillness that unsettled the people watching more than any late comeback would have. Raising my daughter, he finally said. That's the success story. Marcus laughed, loud enough to invite others in. Sure. But like, financially, what's a tech guy pulling in these days? Because I spent more on my watch than you probably make in 6 months. The laughter that followed was uneasy, but it was still laughter, and it still landed exactly where Marcus wanted it to. Daniel set down his water glass. Something in him, quiet, patient, worn smooth by 15 years of not needing anyone's validation, finally decided it was time to leave the conversation, if not the room. Good seeing you, Marcus, he said, and turned to go. He didn't get far, because at that exact moment, the ballroom's side doors opened, and 3 people in dark, tailored suits walked in ahead of a 4th. a woman whose photo Daniel had seen on the cover of a magazine just 2 months earlier. Whitney Cole, founder and CEO of Coleman Logistics Group, the parent company that owned the very warehouse network Daniel had spent 3 years quietly keeping alive. She was not on the guest list. She had not been invited. And she was walking directly toward him. The room reorganized itself instantly around her presence, the way rooms do around genuine power rather than performed power. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Marcus turned to see what had captured everyone's attention. His practiced smile still half-formed on his face, waiting to be aimed at whoever mattered most in the room. It wasn't aimed at him. Whitney Cole crossed the ballroom floor in 6 seconds that felt considerably longer, and stopped directly in front of Daniel Cross. She didn't look at Marcus. She didn't look at anyone else. Her eyes found Daniel's face, and something in her expression shifted into something almost relieved. "You weren't answering your phone," she said, not unkindly. "I turned it off for the reunion," Daniel replied. She nodded once, like that explained everything, and then she turned, slowly, deliberately, to face the stunned half-circle of Daniel's former classmates that had gathered near the bar. Marcus stood frozen at the center of it, his scotch glass tilted at an angle that had stopped mattering. "I don't know what I walked into," Whitney said, her voice carrying easily across the now silent room, "but I know what I heard on my way in, and I want to correct the record." She paused, letting the silence do its work. "This is Daniel Cross." She let the name sit there a moment before continuing. 8 months ago, our Western distribution hub had a systems failure that would have cost this company an estimated $11 million in delayed shipments and contract penalties. Daniel diagnosed it at 2 in the morning, rebuilt the failover protocol by hand, and had every system back online before our first trucks left the dock. He did it without waking a single executive, because he said there wasn't time to explain it, there was only time to fix it. A few people near the front had gone very still. Marcus's mouth opened slightly, then closed. In 3 years, he has never once asked for recognition for work like that, Whitney continued. He sends me a written report and moves on to the next problem. I have met a great many people with impressive titles in 17 years of running this company. I have met very few people I would call irreplaceable. Daniel is one of them. She turned back to Daniel, and something in her face softened out of the executive register. Entirely. Something unguarded. Something the cameras had never caught in any magazine photo. "He's with me," she said simply. 3 words. Quiet, absolute, and utterly final. The silence that followed had weight. Marcus stood at the center of a circle that no longer belonged to him. His earlier joke about 6-month salaries hanging in the air like something he couldn't take back. He set his glass down slowly. For the first time all evening, he had nothing to say. A woman near the bar, Priya, from Daniel's old chemistry class, spoke first. "Daniel, I'm sorry. That was out of line, and I laughed. I shouldn't have." Daniel looked at her and meant it when he said, "You don't owe me anything." But she shook her head, because the small courage of admitting a wrong in front of a room was its own kind of repayment, and Daniel let her have it. Marcus stepped forward eventually, some of the polish gone from his posture. He extended a hand, and to his credit, there was something real underneath the awkwardness. "I didn't know," he said. "I'm sorry, man. Genuinely." Daniel took the hand. Firm, brief, complete. "We've all got 15 years behind us, Marcus. That counts for something." It was the most generous thing he could offer, and it was enough. Later, after most of the room had drifted back into its normal rhythm of drinks and old stories, Whitney found Daniel near the terrace doors, looking out over the city lights. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "The company thing. The whole room." "I know," she said. "I wanted to." She looked at him with the same directness she brought into every boardroom, except softer now, unguarded in a way her staff rarely saw. "You've spent 3 years making sure nobody notices the work you do. I decided tonight nobody was going to get away with pretending it doesn't matter." Daniel didn't know what to say to that, so he said the truest thing he had. "Thank you. There's a technical director position opening at headquarters," she said, watching the skyline instead of him, giving him room to think without the pressure of her gaze. "I've been meaning to ask you properly for a month. Not tonight. Not because of tonight. Just, when you're ready. Ask me at the end of the year, he said. I'll put it on the calendar, she said, and something in her tone made it sound like a promise rather than a scheduling note. They stood together at the railing while the city moved beneath them, neither of them in any hurry to end the evening. Daniel thought about Lily, asleep at his sister's house, and the question she'd asked him 11 days ago. Was he happy back then? He didn't have an answer for 15 years ago. But standing there, in a blazer that no longer felt like the wrong size for the room, he found he had one for right now. Marcus left an hour later, quieter than he'd arrived, without an audience trailing behind him. He didn't look back at Daniel. He didn't need to. Some lessons don't require an audience to land. They only require honesty, and for the first time that night, Marcus had run out of places to hide from it. Daniel drove home just past midnight, windows cracked, the city lights blurring past in that particular way that makes a person feel like the world has just quietly rearranged itself around a truth it had been ignoring. He thought about the yellow legal pad in his bag, full of notes nobody but Whitney would ever read. He thought about a technical director title he wasn't sure he wanted yet, and a woman who'd walked into a room full of strangers just to make sure the right person got seen. There is a kind of strength that needs a room to notice it. It performs, it postures, it requires an audience to survive. And there is another kind that simply works quietly in the dark, 3 years running, fixing what's broken, and moving on before anyone thinks to say thank you. Daniel Cross had spent 15 years being the second kind. Tonight, for the first time, the room finally caught up to what he'd known about himself all along.